7 o'clock. Call to order. Roll call, please.
Gurecki.
Here.
Washington.
Here.
Pergola. Weiss.
Here.
Middleton.
Here.
Drapke.
Here.
Westerhoff.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, any additions to the agenda? All right, not hearing any. Recognitions and celebrations?
None tonight.
Okay. There is no AFT report tonight, and we're really cranking through this. Any public comments?
None.
None. All right. Administrative reports, Dr. Arnold.
Okay. What I have is in the board book. So if board members or members of the public would like to follow along, let me get my presentation up here. Let's see, how do I do that? And I guess I have to go here. And whoops, I don't want to do that. I want to present. Okay. Let's exit out of that and get to the beginning. There we go. Okay. So this is what we were going to do in August. Normally, even August is a little bit late. Usually this is an August or a June type of a discussion, but we're not in a bad spot as far as strategic planning, implementing the strategic plan goes. So a lot of this, it will be repetitive, and so I will go faster during those parts, but feel free to slow me down and ask questions as we go. Just to always like to start off with our mission, empowering each student to develop a love of learning in an evolving global society, and calling out the fact that we do pay attention to our vision in our planning, as well as our core values. This year, as a result of our strategic planning and implementing it, we are really focused on three things anchored in PLCs: focus on learning, a focus on collaboration, and results. Pretty much everything we do that means anything falls under those three categories. We have two main strategies that we are implementing this year. I think everybody knows what they are. The first one is district-wide PLCs. The second one is social emotional learning, just like last year, with a focus on cultural responsiveness. So once again, we are focused, the three big ideas of PLCs: learning, collaboration, and results. The 4 PLC questions are really important for what we're going to talk about tonight, so I'm going to review them. What do we want students to learn? Sometimes you could hear me say that as know and be able to do. That's the curriculum aspect. How do we know if they know it? Or how do we know that the students are learning? That's the assessment component. How will we respond when students don't learn? That's the intervention component. And how will we extend learning for students who already are proficient? And that's the enrichment piece. Those have to be done in order. So you can't jump to step 4 if you aren't already solid with what your curriculum is, how you're assessing that, etc. So just as a quick reminder, these are shifts. So when you hear teachers this year talk about, wow, you know, this is kind of hard. It's not hard work, except for we're rethinking how we've done things in the past to some extent, and it doesn't happen in a linear way. You make some gains, and then you rethink some things and make more gains. So these shifts will look like traditionally a focus on teaching to a focus on learning. It'll look like an emphasis on what was taught to what was learned. So that idea that, well, I taught it, that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on what did the students learn. From coverage of content to a demonstration of proficiency by the students. And once again, the traditional individual teachers being told, here's the curriculum, you will teach this, away from that and towards engaging collaborative teams and building their own shared knowledge regarding what is the essential curriculum. So these are all important shifts, and it's hard. It's going to take some work. So there's two results that we're focused on this year. Everything that the strategies we've identified are to make something happen with the results in ELA and math. Now, clearly there's other areas in the subjects that we care about: science, social studies, PE, art, music. But the two that we have identified for district-wide targets over multiple years initially are math and ELA. To get to those, like I said, the one strategy we've talked about using is PLCs. And we can think of the first two PLC questions, the one about curriculum and the one on assessment, of giving the time range where we've had specific activities working towards implementing those. If you look at the green triangle, that really represents, picture every one of our students. They're somewhere in that green triangle. And we talk about curriculum, what they need to know, and assessment, how do we know they know it, okay? Then you get to that third PLC question. That's really differentiation. So the students who didn't learn it in tier one, we call it, with like everybody else, the standard way, then there's a group of students that need something different. And that can be intervention. You can see that even at the top, there's some kids who need some really individualized interventions, and that's identified in the red there. This triangle is not anything new. It's been around. It used to be called RTI. It's now called MTSS. And in a minute, I'll split this in half because there's really an academic side and a behavior side. I'll show that in a minute. But like I said, the fourth PLC question brings a problem to this triangle, because when we show the triangle like this, you think of the green as the kids who got it like everybody else, the yellow, some small groups needing tier 2 interventions, and then you've got some students who need other interventions that are more individualized. Those are your tier 3 or in the red. But what about students who already know it? The triangle doesn't really compensate for them. So we added a dimension, and this is a little bit different than what people are used to seeing. So we look at the triangle as a diamond now, and just as students were struggling to get some things, there are students who already know it. What are we doing for them as a group? And then there could be some students who are really beyond where we're at. They already know this content. How do we extend or enrich the learning for them? So that becomes a diamond instead of a triangle. Stay with me. It's very visual. Like I said, there's an academic side, okay? And there's a behavior side. When we look at it that way, though, it seems very vertical. The vertical doesn't work for our thinking of students. It's not like something is better than something else. So we look at the SEL for adults and the SEL for students as a way to flip this. So this is where we want to end up with our model. It's not that students on the left are something and students to the right are something. It's an acknowledgement that in the middle, you can educate most of the kids with a tier 1, what we expect most kids to be able to learn and do. Some students will get that a lot faster or a little bit slower, and they'll be in the yellow, and they'll need some interventions or enrichments that way. Some students will really already have gotten that or will really struggle, and they will each need some individual work. What I'm talking about is really creating an MTSS model. And I'm sorry, MTSS stands for multi-tiered system of supports. It used to be the old RTI, response to intervention. And it's laid on a foundation of SEL. We know as educators that we can't get anywhere with the academics if we haven't met the social emotional learning needs first. That's why I put that as a foundation on the bottom, and then the academics build up from there. That's how we envision using PLCs and a focus on SEL for adults and students to increase our math and ELA scores. Any questions about that so far? Yeah.
Can I just, so for number 4, the enrichment
Mm-hmm.
piece, so I know in years past, there's been some concerns as far as, students that get into that
Mm-hmm.
piece.
Gifted, honors,
Right.
enrichment, all of
Right,
that.
and
Mhm.
then, a long time ago, it was related more to, we have, room for X amount of students, and then the rest
Right.
don't get it. So how are we addressing
that I'm glad you brought that up, Doreen, that mindset doesn't live in this world. So you don't put a cap on something, like we don't put a cap on, well, we have this many students who aren't getting it. Anybody else who didn't get it, sorry, you're out. You don't get any intervention. Just like we don't put any cap on, well, only so many kids are in this tier, so we're not going to give any more enrichment or gifted or whatever. So what all this is about, and it's going to become a little bit more clear in a minute, is aligning our efforts and then defining what we're talking about. Because one thing we know is we use terms like enrichment, gifted, honors, really interchangeably when they're not in interchangeable terms. So part of what Jamie is working on this year, and a little bit last year too, is just cleaning up the definitions of that. And then what I'm talking about, questions 3 and 4, this is where it's really important. We can't really address 3 and 4 at a deep level until we're solid with question number 1, what is our curriculum? And question number 2, how are we assessing attainment of the curriculum? Until we get 1 and 2 set, we can do some work. We're doing interventions, and we have enrichment going on, and we have for years. It's not like we are doing nothing, but we can't successfully address those 2 questions in the PLC model until 1 and 2 are finished in order, or addressed in order. They're never really finished, right? Does that address?
I just, I do think that that whole piece, really needs to be looked at.
One thing we can come back to the board with, and Jamie can make a note of this, is by the end of last year, we did tighten up some of the criteria, and we haven't brought that to the board to really give you a presentation. So that could be a brief explanation of what we've done in the interim until we can get to a deeper review of gifted, for example.
Perfect. Okay.
Jamie's making a note of that. All right, thank you. So we began PLC question in earnest last year, question number 1, and that was around our priority standards. And some grade levels have those in place for certain subjects. Others are still working on it. That's going to be a multi-year journey. The next question, so we don't finish one question and then start another. There's a blend. So as we're getting solid with PLC question number 1 about the curriculum, we are already starting to look at what do we need to start doing for professional learning around assessment literacy for our staff. And so we're getting in already this year, and that's actually an item on the agenda for board discussion around assessment practices. That, if you look at the dates, I have listed 2021 to 2025. It's a long year, it's a multi-year project, but starting this year with some professional learning. And you ask, how do we do all this? How do we get this professional learning around PLCs and SEL into a normal year when you only have 4 teacher institutes? The answer is we engage in professional development every week. The fact that we put a professional learning community model in that early dismissal on Wednesdays is critical, and it looks like this. Every single week, a blue is a PLC session. So all of the teachers have teams that they have time with during that early dismissal. So they are not just planning per se, but they are working on the PLC questions in every one of those blue lines, those rows. Our goal was to create a model that had at least 3 weeks in a row of PLC time. And then every 4th one typically is district-wide PD, professional development, during that time for everybody around one of our strategic priorities. So you can see on September 8th, we hit safety. On October 6th, PLC will give some more professional development on PLCs. November 3rd, SEL. And we'll just keep going with that pattern. I can show you the rest, and the yellow line is the Teacher Institute. January, March 4th, and May 13th are our other 3 teacher institutes. We've decided as a calendar committee, we like to backload those learning dates, and that blends really well with what we're doing with the PLC release every week. And then you can see in the orange, the other district-wide professional learning. So it is truly an ongoing learning process for all staff, not just a 4 times a year we get together, we have a day off, we have some coffee and donuts, we learn some things, and then we go do some other things. Any questions about that so far? Okay. This is familiar to everyone. This is our strategic plan. These are our 5 strategic plan goal areas, our strategic goals. They're broken down. This is not a new slide. I won't take time on this. The color matters. We color code just because it makes it a little bit easier to read. And so I'm going to spend the most time talking about goal 1, student growth and achievement. I do want to point out that in these arrow shapes, you have the goals, but each goal has 1 or 2 high-level strategies that were developed by the strategic planning team back, and it was about 50 people, right, participated in that. And that was back in the winter of 2019-20. This is right before COVID hit. This is what we worked on last year. Notice that the next slide is going to say what we're working on this year. It's the same areas. The important thing that we're not floating back and forth between strategies. We're staying with high leverage strategies that take multiple years to implement, and we're going deep with them. There's a lot of power in that. Student growth. This is a reminder of what we did last year. It becomes orange if we accomplished it. And then this year we're building on it. This is your curriculum piece, okay? There's another priority strategy for student growth and achievement. Last year, we started to identify our assessments. What were our strengths? What were our weaknesses? Jamie did a lot of work around that. We accomplished that. This year, now we're starting to provide initial professional development for a balanced assessment model based on best practice. And that's what we're going to talk about during the board discussion later. Looking at where we need to go, we've had to add a year. If you notice on this one, in the original plan, we didn't have something extra for 22-23. Knowing what we know about what it takes to get all of our capacity up with assessment, we're going to have a good this year and next year focus on PD for assessment practices. And we might need more after that, but I would say it needs at least this year and next year. SMART goals. SMART goals matter. Remember, if we're focused on increasing math and ELA, you're going to ask, what are we using to measure? I've got some slides about that. The state assessment, IAR, has some problems. I've shown you parts of this in the past. We will also use district benchmarks such as FastBridge because we don't yet have across our district common assessments in place, but that's one thing we're going to want to build over the next few years. So for math, it says in red, to be determined by the district leadership team, fall 2021. Their first meeting is coming up in October. Same thing for ELA, no difference. So math and ELA, those real SMART goals are being developed with DLT. They'll be brought back to the board for your approval. You've seen some of this, just the anomaly with the data trends. You've seen that top note before. The second note is new. ISB has stated that there will not be any student growth measured in Illinois using the spring 2021 assessment because they canceled IAR in 2020 due to COVID. So just a note that student growth is out the window for 1 year from a state perspective. This is an important slide. This is a little bit more than you've seen in the past, and I'll draw your attention to the canceled. So you see at the bottom, we had ISAT, we had PARC. Now we're into our third iteration of a state assessment for math and ELA, IAR. And you can see that year 1 is in blue, 2019. Our average score across the district was 57. 2020 it was canceled because of COVID. The current scores, we have them in raw form. They are embargoed for all districts until October 29th, I think is the date. And then we can release them and talk about them publicly. Administratively, we've been using some of the data, but we're not allowed to publicly share the results. I will tell you that I think they're lower than any other number you're going to see on here. So if that's your spoiler alert, don't expect it to be where this bar is.
Real quick, just for context for my own, is looking across this left to right, we're going through obviously number of different assessment types, but visually I'm seeing the numbers go down. Is there any normalization of that data? Or if as a district, have we gotten worse through this, or is it just because we're doing different assessments?
Yes and no. It's both of those things. So if you look at ISAT, the interesting thing about ISAT, 2012 through 2015 were all ISAT tests, But the reason everyone in the state went from something like whatever they were, we were a 70 down to 48, is they raised the bar for meets and exceeds. So whatever was passing before, that bar was raised, everybody's cumulative number of meets and exceeds dropped. That was pretty much across the state. So the first 4 bars, 88, 73, 70, and 48, are all the same test. The only difference was they changed the criteria on the grading, for lack of a better word. Park is a uniquely different test, very different than ISAT. Those numbers were what they were, 55, 55, 46. Then IAR came in. IAR was supposed to be comparable to Park. I haven't seen any real statistics around how comparable is it, but you can see by the numbers, it looks pretty good. It's pretty close. Then you have 2020 canceled, that will never have a number for that. And then you have the embargoed results that we took in the spring last year during COVID. Now, to your point though, is that we have 2 more, but just in the past week, I've been reading news from the state that the contract is up in 2025 for the state test. They have signaled that they are intent, this is nothing official, but they are intent in switching the test again after 2023. The purpose of this is when we are trying to set targets with math and ELA using a state assessment, I don't know how much time and energy we're going to really spend on putting a lot of stock in our targets because the tool that we're using, we believe, based on what I'm being told today, it's probably going to change before 2024. We'll have a different test. How comparable will it be? Who knows? We don't know. So we have a different need to really start, if we're going to look at results and have a results-oriented culture, we're never going to ignore the state test, but we've got to find something internal that gives us better data to go on that we know will be there when we need to look at our results long term. The next slide, shows the same thing, just different subject area, different numbers, obviously, but the same idea is presented. Science, same thing. I don't know that they're going to change the science assessment anytime soon. I have not heard talk about that. Science was assessed under the old ISAT. They took 2 years, 2015, 2016, and did no statewide assessment for science. And then they brought back the Illinois science assessment in 2017. So any other questions about that's all goal area 1, student growth and achievement. The rest will go a little bit quicker. Learning culture, you can see the same. You know what we did last year with SEL. We're continuing our efforts. We said that we would look at our greatest area of need from the Castle rubric. Last year, the DLT identified cultural responsiveness as that greatest area of need. So that will be an area that we'll be focusing our strategies on this year. The SMART goal for SEL will be determined by DLT again, like we did last year in the fall. And once again, that meeting is coming up in early October. The third goal, safe professional culture. We didn't have any strategies identified for number 4. We are focused on safety though. We are giving throughout the year run, hide, fight training, and we are focused on a communication tool called Crisis Go. The other part of that goal area though, professional culture, does involve the PLCs. So you can see what we did last year and where we're moving forward this year. Partnerships, this is one that we didn't create strategies around. Strategy number 6. Number 7, we started to get a baseline last year. This is the one that we didn't quite meet last year. So we're continuing that. We don't just leave things alone. We'll build upon that and then move forward with what we had planned this year. The thing that I have at this point formed a superintendent parent focus group. And between information we get from that and survey data, these are the things that will help build our communications plan and the partnership goal area. They were put on hold with COVID last year. Finally, resources, the 2 main areas are a long-term facilities plan, which we accomplished last year, and to begin the development of a multi-year technology plan, which we did accomplish last year, but we need to build upon that. You'll see some of that tonight with what Bill will present. And then you'll see this year's focus going forward. So this is a slide I'm going to take a minute on. I don't have a good visual for this, but when people say You hear top down all the time. We are not a top down district. Everything we're doing, it builds up from the classroom with the exception of the board's role. Every board of education has a role to set a direction for the district and approve and establish long-range goals. So saying, yes, we want to see our math and ELA scores go up. And then I come back with a recommendation of how that would look with trend data. And you would say, yes, this is what we need to do. That's where the board's role stops. And that's where the administrative role stops. These are in order. So after the board says, go improve in this area, then under this structure, those goal areas go down to grade levels. Teachers who know what is the greatest area of need in their classrooms at their grade level. Kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade. They identify GANs, greatest area of needs, and they develop their own SMART goals focused on their own students in their grade level. And that is their strategy. They pick strategies that they believe will move the needle, in this example, in math or in ELA. And it's not always something that would happen in 1 year. Sometimes it's going to be a multi-year strategy, but they'll have targets for year 1 and targets for year 2. Once the grade level, the teachers have identified what their kids need at that grade level in that subject area, that gets communicated up to the school leadership team, the SLT. So then each principal works with their school leadership team to decide, based on what the grade levels are telling us in math or ELA, is there a school-wide strategy that we need to put in place, building upon what the teachers have told us, that we do as a whole school, Ludwig or Walsh, etc. Then when they've established that, and that's what they're working on right now, this month, they're working on that kind of, those kind of GANs and SMART goals for the first time in a lot of ways. So we know this is a year of learning by doing. Our expectations are just try it. There's no stress. We're not putting pressure on people. Just practice the process is all we're trying to do. That then on October 5th will get communicated by the 4 school leadership teams to the district leadership team. The district leadership team isn't getting into the business of what each grade level is doing. They're focused on what's happening in the schools and are there high leverage strategies that we need to latch onto as a district to support what the schools are doing because they're supporting what the classrooms are doing. So it truly is the board setting that direction and that long-term goal, and then it goes right down to the classroom student level, and then the strategies build up smartly from there, okay? That's really critical because it's not a top-down system. The ALT does have a role in this also. The administrative leadership team, from an alignment perspective, takes all these goals. So when Reed has school goals set, those become that principal's goals in my performance evaluation of them. So part of each principal's evaluation is attaining the school-wide goals they set. For district level administrators, myself, the directors, Dave, then those goals come from district-wide strategies from the DLT. So when the DLT says we're going to do this, those then become Nora's or Jamie's or Bill's or Dave's or my goal for our performance evaluations. So the accountability is built in with every administrator buying into what really started, well, it started with the board's direction, but it really started at the teacher level in the classroom. And that's the part that it's going to take time for people to believe that's the way it's working, but we're really tight on that. And it matters a lot when you talk about building teacher, empowering teachers, building teacher leaders, creating teacher self-efficacy are all embedded in that process, and they're foundational to what we're doing. I'm not going to go over the purpose of the district leadership team. You've seen this before. It's not anything new. I do want to call out the membership. You're talking about close to 40 folks who are working together to do this, and it's a very representative group. For the first time this year, we are folding in parents. You might ask, how did those parents get selected? I reached out to the parents who still have students in the district who were on the strategic plan team. So we had a lot of parents that were involved back in 2019 in the development of that. I reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to be a part of our DLT? You know how this was born. Would you like to help keep it moving forward? And I think each one of them I asked said yes. a few had moved on and we don't have kids in the district anymore. Principals select their teachers. Paraprofessionals are kind of selected by the principals. We'd like to have one per building, but we don't force that on anyone. And then you as board members self-selected. You can see the meeting dates there, and the part of the deal.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Can you just go back to, so you said for teachers, so we have 21 across the 4 schools,
Mm-hmm.
and you said principals chose them.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't ask like for teachers that were like interested.
So there's.
I get a little hesitant, nervous when I hear principals handpick teachers.
Yep.
Because what kind of, information are we going to gather?
Do we have a good old boy system, and do we have a bunch of yes men?
Right.
Yeah. So the entire system is built against that. I'm very sensitive to committees or groups that are yes men or the good old boys network. We don't do that. These are not teachers' pet. These are not principals' pets. This is something that we negotiated with the union. It's teachers receive a stipend. It's the school leadership team. There's a school leadership team stipend, and there are 2 team leaders for every grade level. K-5. 6-8 is a little bit different, as everything in the world of junior high, middle school, but the same structure does exist there. So each school was allotted 5 seats on the DLT. The only thing I was tight on is you need to give us 1 of your grade level per. So they can have 2 if they want. They could have 2 first grade or 2 kindergarten at Walsh, but at least 1 first grade, 1 kindergarten. And then, and early childhood is pre-K is not forgotten, but they're kind of folded into kindergarten. And then the other 3 or 4, the other 3 were, it could be at that building, they might need a special ed voice. They might need an interventionist voice. It's really up to that building, that principal to decide that. I do have full faith in the principals that they're making good decisions on that. And I have always said publicly, if I get a whiff of, it's easy to say, oh, it's just the principal's pets. I mean, I 25 years, I've heard that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's true. Most of the time it's not. And so my spidey senses are aware of that concern. I don't know all of them. They're not all set yet. But I don't have that concern going into this year of DLT.
And I know principals are right here, but
they can take it.
I just think that, over the years of being on the board, I have seen, unfortunately, some of that occurring. So I just wanted to make sure.
It's a fair concern. I'd ask us to draw a line in the sand when I came on board. We've really worked hard going into 3 years now to put that to bed. And I do acknowledge that I wasn't here before I was here, so I can't speak to that. But I've talked extensively with the union about those concerns. I've talked extensively with our admin team about these concerns. This is not the first time they've heard me talk about it. So I do feel very comfortable with, and I don't even know who all these individuals are yet, but I don't need to know who they are yet to feel comfortable with the decisions the principals are making. I have full faith in them.
Thank you.
I have full faith in them until I don't. Right now I do. The DLT will help me and the admin team create an action plan. And then just as a wrap up, SMART goals will be, and the measures we will use for implementation of strategies will be presented at the November 16th board meeting. It needs to be November 6th. This is why I like to do all the stuff we're talking about at this DLT. I would have preferred to have all this done in June so we could be doing this in August, but that's the cycle we are striving to get to by the end of this year, to have all the assessment conversations and targets and everything set in June more solidly, so that August we're having this presentation and you're rocking and rolling from there. Any questions? We've been working towards this for 3 years. This is our 3rd year. It's here. This is the real way we're doing it, short of my just comfort with the timeline. We're not exactly on the timeline, but we're working the work the way we need to finally. And it does feel new. It feels different. It's everyone's first time doing that as far as our staff. And so anytime we do something new, it feels a little bit clunky, a little awkward. We're going to support and we're going to get through the first year. And then I know those aha moments will be here along the way. Like, oh, I get it now. And some of it might be June, some of it might be December, but we'll get those aha moments. All right, you can stop the share, go back to, I do want to share the metrics real quick. It wouldn't be a pandemic if we didn't get to talk about our metrics. This is a preview of what will be going out tomorrow. These numbers are as of today. I doubt I'll tweak. Oh, I'm not sharing. Thank you. This is in the board book also. I do believe it's public. I don't believe we're going to go in and I won't go in and change these numbers tomorrow morning. So I think this is where we're at. But just as a quick reminder, there are 5 measures we're using. Positivity rate for students and staff. You can click on this document, and this is out there for the public also. All this is public information. You can see the 7-day rolling average is in this line, and it calculates it. Forget the numbers going forward. It's just until you enter numbers in the column, that's the real number for the 7-day rolling average. And you can see our numbers. I thought we hit 50 at some point back there, but we've been around mid 40s, upper 30s for quarantining. Right now we're at a low point for quarantining, which is good, 32. And 9 positives. We've been hovering around 9 through 10 or 11 for quite some time. So going back to not that, the metrics. There it is. Going back to the metrics, just to highlight, shield testing rate still at 74% of our students are participating. The D92 positivity rate, these are our zip codes, 2.3. That's actually down about 1.5% from September 8th, 2 weeks ago. We do this every 2 weeks. Our D92 zip code of new cases per 100,000 is still just a little bit over 100. 100 is the target. We're at 106.7, but that is down from 177 on September 8th. So we like the way they're trending. The vaccination rate within our boundaries, that date is wrong. That's from today, not August 30th. And we are up from 49.7 to 50.9, so a little bit higher. This is where we would normally put the color in this row of what are we red, are we yellow, are we blue? But right now we're under the mask mandate. Down below, I won't go through any of these lines. They're all just FYI, but we do track those other pieces of information. And I have added now new this week, a chart that the board has seen before, and it just shows how many tests we're doing each week, and then the historical data is there. Any questions about our COVID reporting? This is all on the website.
The positivity rate that you were showing on that, is that positivity based on our shield testing, or is that parents calling and saying that they're?
So there's 2 different, so the one positivity rate, when it says the first row, D92 students and staff, that's that chart with the blue and white chart with all the numbers. So those are our real cases. Forget about, it has nothing to do with shield. It's just what's really going on with how many students or staff are quarantined or positive every single day. We track that. And it always has about a day lag, but every day that's up there. Then there's the community positivity rate, which is our Lockport, Homer Glen zip code. So some of those people go to 33C, for example, or they go to District 91, but our Lockport, Homer Glen zip codes, that's the 3rd line. So we're tracking the 7-day rolling average for the community as well as the school and classrooms.
Do you feel the shield testing is going
The best people to ask would be the principals. I would say yes. Every week it's gotten better. Today was the first day. We've gotten to what always envisioned it would be. Today we had Ludwig's, and I don't think Miss Like you were involved with that really at all. So it ran smoothly without the principal doing everything. We're still going to keep monitoring that. I know that as much as possible, when it's nice outside, they're trying to get the kids outside to do it. The one thing I will say is the students are always in the hallway in a public space. They're never alone in a room with shield testing. And there's always, 15 students for one or two shield testers out there. And so it's a really safe environment. I know there were some concerns about that when we started, but it is going smoothly. We're getting that routine. Kids are learning how to drool in school. Every time I go, and I've been there every day for them, except I missed 1 or 2 at Oak Prairie. And I just tell the kids, did you ever think we were going to ask you to spit in school? And we don't spit, we drool, but it's a different world. But they come out and some lessons learned. The first time we did it, we had some kids trying, the principals found out late in the game, like 20 minutes trying to fill this vial. And we put an end to that. We said, never again. If you can't get this in 5 minutes, it's okay. You're done. Move on. We're not going to drag a kid's day out, and it kind of ruins their day. I'm trying to do that. So, and some kids, I've seen a kindergartner or two, they just can't do it. I mean, they don't understand what's going on with their mouth. But sure, those were early things. Now we're entering our 4th week of doing it, and it is running very smoothly at Ludwig today. And then check on the principals. I go there and try to see, is it going well? It's as good as we could have hoped for at this point.
And the green line on the bottom of that last page, there was a green line that shows the actual positive tests
Cases. Yeah. So
discovered from Shield, yes or no?
those are discovered. Yeah, that's all Shield data.
Yes.
So there could be, so the thing with that is those are only the 74% of our students who participate in Shield. You could have somebody who doesn't participate in Shield who is also positive, not on that chart.
Mhm.
But every student is captured on the first line of this measurement, back in that blue and white page, every single student.
Can I just ask, I know you had sent an email, and I'm trying to understand like why. So in regards to the shield testing, like for the students, staff, or that, why can't they get the results?
Oh, that's so frustrating. So when Melissa asked, how's it going? That the part that we can control is going very smoothly. Our principals are doing a great job getting a good process in place. It's running very smoothly. We have zero control over this parent portal. And it's really a parent staff portal. So every staff member get on there. It doesn't exist yet. Some schools had it in place, but they are so overwhelmed. And I'll use this example. What came in a story in the Trib last week was, I want to say it was 439 school districts had signed up for this, but only 79 were actually implementing it.
Okay.
So to use the term overwhelmed is an understatement. Whoever the shield testing groups are, we just got confirmation that we needed something adjusted. And they said it took us 2 or 3 weeks to get an acknowledgement of our concern. They told us today in an email, we get it, we're going to fix it, and give us a week. So just to fix this one thing that I would think we'd be going to a computer, change something, and now I can see it differently, it's going to take them a week. They're just overwhelmed. And we got in at the right time to get our system up and running. I'm disappointed and frustrated that we don't have the parent portal yet. I'm confident we're going to get it when we're in line to get it. Right now, they're just trying to get other schools tested, not the parent portals up and working. I think the high school might have theirs. They got it, maybe not. I know they tried to get it going.
Yep.
It's just where are you in the queue for getting your pieces implemented?
So then the only result that we're getting back is that if it's a positive.
Well, depends on who you mean by we. My nurses and I have access to the system. I can see every result every day. I can tell you every kid that tested. I can tell you if they're negative, if they're positive, if it was a rejected test because they didn't have enough saliva in the tube. I get those results because we have, as administrators, we have back-end access. When there's a positive test result, those come directly to my inbox and to Patty McGuire, our head school nurse, into her inbox. So we know immediately as soon as a lab gets a positive hit, and the test today went through. They finished at probably 10 or 11 o'clock today. All those vials went to a lab. They're being tested probably as we speak tonight. At some point overnight or tomorrow morning, if there's a positive, I will immediately get an email. They don't all come at once. They come in batches. So you might get one here. If it's a weekend, the hardest one and the most problematic is Eau Prairie. They test on a Friday, which means Saturday morning, I get an email and we got a call. This past Saturday, I called two parents I emailed them 6:30 Saturday morning, said, hey, your child's positive. It's too early for me to give you a call. I'll call you after 8 o'clock. So I talked to both of those parents, did contact tracing on Saturday, but I also checked on Sunday because there have been times when we still get those on Sunday too. You never know when those are going to come in. It's whenever the lab processes the results. So from a safety standpoint, I have no worries. We get the people who need to know, get notified, the administration, the parent immediately. All the negatives, it's unfortunate, but it's no news is good news. They're going to have to trust that we're on top of it and we are calling all of these immediately.
And then the turnaround time for the lab results, is it like 24 hours?
Typically, everything's typical in our world. Oak Prairie finished testing what time on Friday? 11 o'clock they were finished. I think it was 6 in the morning that I got 2 positive emails. So I was able to, get an email out and get notified those parents by 6:30 on a Saturday morning. That's pretty good. Because we didn't want those kids, if they were in different athletics or just, you just want to know as soon as possible, this is what's going on.
Have parents expressed, and it sounds like this is not, us, but, with the patient, or I'm sorry, I work in a hospital, not patient portal.
Yeah. It's a patient portal. Yeah, it is.
Parent portal.
Mm-hmm.
Have we gotten feedback from parents? Are they upset that they cannot?
I think everybody, as a human being, I would want to be able to get, if we have the ability for parents to check grades, and there's some parents that check grades like every hour.
Yeah.
So I'm sure parents would want to do that. I've had 0 concerns from parents about that,
Okay.
but we've also communicated like, hey, we don't have any control over this. So it's been nice not having that parent concern. We would all want, I would promise you, the 2 individuals in the district that want this more than parents are myself and Patty McGuire, because that would take the burden off of me on a Saturday morning or Patty on a Saturday morning at 6 o'clock reading that and feeling that sense of urgency to get that parent notified.
Right.
I would love that email and text to go directly to that parent from the lab I would still get that information, but I could rest assured that the parent knows we'll follow up sometime and be good to go.
Okay.
So I promise you, no one in D92 wants that more than the 2 of us. But there's nothing I can do about it besides beat my head against the wall, and that still hasn't helped.
And then I just have one last question regarding this.
Sure.
So the quarantining, I've been kind of, watching the numbers and all of that. So how is that going as far as more instruction, with?
What do you mean more instruction?
Like for the students that are being quarantined, and.
So what's their instruction like? It varies. We negotiated with the union, the requirements from ISB are 5 hours of instruction per day. That's not negotiable. You can deliver that through sending paper assignments home, things like that. It can all be asynchronous, the term we got so used to last year. Not ideal, obviously, especially the grade level matters. We want to maintain relationships and connections with kids, and that doesn't do that. So we, with the union, try to negotiate how this happens, how we can maintain that continuity of learning during those 10 days. That's very important. And so where we landed was teachers have choice. They can send home the paper assignments. They can do some check-ins with some paper assignments. They can certainly do more live streaming. They could record. They could go as far in the continuum as they want. I have had parent concerns about that. I have talked with the union about that. That is something that we're still working through. I think there's a better way to do that going forward, but it's a work in progress.
All right. I mean, do we, I'm just thinking like teachers and that, I mean, are we checking in with them just to kind of see how they're doing with balancing all of that? And
There is a process I'm using to get to that point, yes.
all right, thank you.
This, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. That concludes my reports.
All right, thank you. Assistant Superintendent for Business Services.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to pull up a presentation that I'm going to get to in a moment. All right, perfect. So hold that thought. We will be getting to the budget in a moment, but I do just want to walk through a couple of things from my memo that's in the board packet. First off, summer construction is rapidly underway. We are summer 22 construction. We have been working on designs, and DLA, our architect firm, has provided us some finalized ideas that I think have at least now gone out to the principals to at least do sort of a final check on. The other thing, then, we've already received agreements now that have been signed for some land surveying. So those pieces are already in motion. So there's going to be, from, like we said last month, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be happening over the next 2 months for us.
Real quickly, the drawing that we saw, I think today, right?
Yes.
Essentially, the major changes that I noted were most of the principal's offices were more forward. They came up towards the center if they weren't already there, or not the center, but up closer to the door, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the feedback. So obviously principals have been in on this design right from the beginning. I mean, we had meetings back over the summer with DLA where we did some brainstorming sessions, and we had our principals, we had some other administrators, we had buildings and grounds, so that we got to hear everybody's concerns and put all that together. And that's kind of representative of the big picture designs that you've seen now in your emails. We haven't made those public yet. We're still working through details on those, but obviously the public, we will want them to see, what we can when we can get to that point. It's very important. We do believe we are going to have the opportunity to really redo the outside of each of our 3 elementaries and really make a footprint that's recognizable for the district. And I think it's going to be something that all of us can feel proud of and once it's finished. So that's been a lot of the effort that we've been going through. As I mentioned, the surveying is already, we're signing agreements for that to get that process started. A couple other items, we're working through some processes with our finance system called green accounting. And I just wanted to update, you'll hear things that we've gone to an employee portal, which was quite new for the district. However, even in the back office portions of the business office, we're going to be working through trying to streamline, trying to reduce the paper, trying to do as much as we can to use our finance system so that we're actually using purchase orders the way they should be, just to streamline paying bills, receiving bills, and just helping our staff out internally. So that's been a big effort that's been underway as well. TRS, 2 things. I've heard rumor that the savings, the supplemental savings plan is going to be back. We haven't seen anything yet, but once I officially know that we've got legislation that's approved that the governor has signed, we will need to take action as a board. You will need to take action as a board to approve that, and then we can offer that plan to our teachers. We are also in the middle of Gemini reporting, so that's the new reporting module through TRS that's required payroll to really change the way that we've reported out our earnings really is the best way to say it. So it's by pay period, changes quite a bit for us, and but we've been on track with that reporting that actually has just already started. That's pretty much it for my memo. Happy to answer any questions before I jump into the budget presentation.
If I could, oh, go ahead.
Just Dave, the meeting in regards to the design and all of that, the exterior, did we get any updates? There
They're
was,
still working on,
Okay.
so the idea of trying to do something to differentiate
Right.
each building, DLA is still chewing on that and trying to figure out how to address that.
okay,
I have not seen any plans from them, but I would expect they're gonna be out on Friday, actually looking at all of our spaces, to really get a sense of, now, going through all the corners and crevices. We'll have a chance to ask and see if we have an update. And if I do have anything, I'll share it.
okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, there was one last thing on my memo I wanted to point out, and that's the audit. We are still waiting to hear back from Glass and Smith. We expect to have them present at either next month's board meeting or in November. I will have an update for that. On to the budget now. So obviously last month we approved the tentative budget. This month I'm coming forward with a request that we approve this year's budget. So it obviously, for our new board members, it might seem a little strange to be in September and we're asking you to approve a budget that we've already started. So that is kind of a unique thing, very similar, very common for governmental institutions. So we are in fiscal year 22. And so I'm going to be asking you to tonight to approve a budget for fiscal year 22. The couple highlights, I think, I'll just click through a few things up here. So obviously we use the budget for a lot of things, but the biggest thing for us, it's a communication tool. It's a communication tool for us and the administration, for us and the public, for us and you, really making sure that our priorities are what we want them to be. Couple other things then I'll quickly go over the budget, just a quick budget overview, the fund summary, and some key assumptions that I'll talk about as well. So obviously there are always going to be things that, that could be negatives or drawbacks to any time we start talking about funds and revenue. So we always have the revenue that we bring in versus the expenditures that go out. And so we're always trying to have more revenue and spend less on the expenditure side. So that's always the goal, but there are some things that are sometimes out of our control, like property tax caps, state funding, pension shifts, just the ongoing uncertainty with COVID. So these are all obstacles, but as best we can, we apply those into the budget and have that long-term forecast that we're looking at. Some other highlights then, you can see the revenue at a little over 28 million versus the expenditures at 26 million. That's what's on the budget summary form that you'll see if you've looked through the budget itself. Obviously some other points that I brought up in the past, but we are moving towards Chromebooks this year and we'll continue to be rolling those out. The budget also reflects the 0% aggregate increase in benefits. So for our health insurance overall, that's obviously still continue to be great news for us. That's several years now in a row. And then overall, a 4% increase for salaries. The next bullet point talks about the minimum wage. That's obviously been a component that's been considered in putting together the budget. The unemployment act that changed, and you just want to point out there is one other potential budget impact, but it's kind of hard to estimate at this point. There's a new family medical leave law for employees. It changes the old standard of 1,250 hours, changes it down to 1,000 hours, that you've had to have worked at least 1,000 hours. So that's really applying to really, our school staff really is the main target for that. So How much of an impact that'll have on us, it's hard to say at this point, but just something to watch. The financial profile scores there, just for everyone's benefit. Just a quick snapshot of our revenue. And so obviously one of the things that is critical for us is just where does our revenue come from? And so you can see from this where the thin line there for 2020 of what the federal revenue was. So we're bringing in a very small portion of our overall revenue from federal sources. So your title grants, programs like that, SPED funding. State sources, then you can see that's a larger portion for us. But by and large, the bulk at about 88% of our revenue comes from local sources. So property taxes and other local sources that we rely on to fund our school district. And then from an expenditure standpoint, you get the idea, right off the bat of where our money goes. The bulk of our money, over 15 million there, is for salaries. And obviously we're a people business, and that's where the bulk of our money is end up being spent. Just a quick snapshot of the fund balance. This was taken last month, but a fund balance for us, and I will highlight probably just the most important one for us that we'll get to is the capital projects fund. You can see it was there at just a little over 5 million. Now I will come back to talking about the budget itself. On the budget form for this year, you will see that we're going to be utilizing that fund balance. And so this is very common for school districts to do. There are other borrowing mechanisms you can use, but this is not borrowing. This is our cash that we have specifically for the purpose of spending it on our buildings and our property. So in this case, for this year, I have put in about a little over $2 million to begin the work for the 22 construction. So we assume we're going to have bills starting up. Obviously, we'll have architect fees. We've got already surveying fees. We intend to have that work begin the minute school is done, assuming everything stays on course. So obviously still quite a bit to do. And that wraps up that presentation. As I said, later on in the evening is the budget is there for your perusal, but I just want to call out, everybody needs to actually sign the budget form tonight. So please don't leave until I've gotten your signature on this budget form. Otherwise, I will come to your house tonight. All right. And that finishes my report unless there's any questions.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, Director of Student Services and the Director of Curriculum together.
Actually, good evening. We're going to kind of outsource, actually. Jamie McCluskey and I have the pleasure of working with Elise Kohler. She's a special ed teacher at Missouri Junior High. She has great experience and has her type 75. So we are so thankful. She was our summer school and WIN principal this past summer. She experienced things that I've never experienced in 26 years. So relocating a building midsummer, having baths excavated, things that aren't typical your first year out. So we invited her in this evening to share with us some data on what we saw with our students. Keep in mind, she'll go through, but some students were here in June, some were here in August, some were here in bulk. So the data is not as clear as like everyone did the same thing. So thanks, Elise.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So for the Summer WIN and ESY program, it took place, the first one at Ludwig School, from June 14th to July 1st. And it was from 8 a.m. till 11, and that was a total of 12 days. Then ESY had a second session, which was at Walsh School, and that was from August 2nd to the 12th, and then that was an additional 8 days. So ESY went for 20 days, and then the WIN program was there for 12. Students were enrolled in the WIN program based off of low engagement during remote learning, FastBridge data, and then also teacher recommendation. ESY students were enrolled to provide the continuation of learning and related services to maintain IEP goals. The curriculum was based off of students' IEP goals and objectives and the District 92 priority standards. And we also addressed SEL during both sessions. The in-person learning and small class sizes allowed for positive socialization in the classroom as well as peer buddy groups. And our SEL activities addressed the CASEL core competencies. Each student was given a progress report. So for WIN, it looked a little different than the ESY students. Those were aligned to the District 92 priority standards, and each grade worked on 2 priority standards for reading and math. And they were based on a 4-3-2-1 scale. And if they got a 4, they exceeded the standard. The 3 meant they met the standard. The 2 was approaching, and then a 1 was limited proficiency. And really limited proficiency means like they didn't show up, so no one got that, which was great. The IEP progress reports were completed using the program Easy IEP, which we have, with data gathered from the teachers and related services, and during their both sessions during the ESY. So my conclusions from the WIN, we had 49 students that were registered. The average attendance was 10 out of 12 days, which was 86% of the time. We looked at the FastBridge scores from winter to fall, and in A reading, 58% of those students showed growth, which was very well. Of those students who showed growth, they attended 87% or more of the time. And then we also looked at A math, and those students had 71% of them show growth. The conclusions for ESY, we had 86 students that attended, and like Nora mentioned, we had 53 students that attended both sessions, so the 20 days. We had 76 that were in the first session, and then 63 students were in session 2. So 53 of those attended both. The average attendance for ESY was 88%. And after analyzing the goal reports for ESY students on Easy IEP, there were no students that showed regression of skills, which was great to see. Additionally, we had 12 students that came in for pre-K walk-in speech, and that was in June and the August sessions. So parents were really happy to have like the continuation of in-person speech. So both the WIN program and the ESY showed a direct correlation between attendance and progress, meaning the more that they attended school, the better their results were. Upon the conclusion of both sessions, I conducted a staff survey because we had different staff working. Some did both, some did one or the other. And they preferred working the 4-day schedule, because in the past we've had 5 days a week. And they also preferred the 8 to 11 hours. They preferred the in-person summer school. And something that they thought could change for next year or moving forward would be the second session. It was very close to the start of the new school year. So it's a little hard getting your own classroom ready or just paperwork and everything we kind of needed to do. That's something we, I know Nora and I have talked about just adjusting.
Really close.
Yeah. So I'd like to conclude with saying thank you to all of the staff that was involved this summer, teachers, paras, secretaries, related services, the nurse, the custodial staff, Teresa and Lisa, like, thank you so much. Everyone was so kind and welcoming in their buildings, and they did an amazing job. Thank you to Nora and Jamie for being a great mentor to me. And I'd like to thank Tim and Board of Education for just allowing me to be a part of this position. It was an awesome experience. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, but otherwise, thank you.
The WINS program those are not traditional IEP students with IEPs.
Correct.
And how many students were offered the opportunity to participate in that program?
I want to say we were right around, like, there was close to like 75.
Right. I think there was about 22 that declined.
Did decline.
That were offered. We did have some students that, didn't participate at all during remote and it's, in person, and they said they'd show up and they didn't. We were kind of sticklers. I think a couple came under the cracks, parents, oh, we'll be there. And we really said, if you can't come all 3 weeks, please don't take the seat. Like, it's really gonna make a difference if you can be there. And I think we had 2 or 3 that missed a whole week. When you miss a third of the program, your progress isn't gonna be as good as those. But the attendance definitely correlated. And I have to say, we made lots of calls about attendance. I didn't think it was gonna be that high. Because when you're in the middle of it, you don't think about it. But then when we add it up, we're like, this is great.
So bad.
Yeah.
So the 2 groups, ESY, extended school year, so that's required. We always have had that. And then WIN, what I need or whatever I need, depending on who you talk about, what that acronym is. Those are students we've never serviced in the past. They don't have an IEP or even a 504 necessarily, but they would be the intervention students that we talked about earlier in that yellow or red. So this is something I know very much on our radar for next year is how do we continue those supports? So I don't see that part going away. I think our initial thought of next year is maybe not August. Am I speaking out of turn? That might have been a little bit much.
It's hard to pull off August this year, and maybe moving the building made a difference. There was a lot of variables this summer. But I think because we also started earlier, our school year started August 18th, so staff reported the 14th or 15th, I forget what day they came in for institute. We were done on the 10th. So it was like custodians went empty rooms and loading rooms. Custodial really had heavy lift. So I think we would want at least 2 weeks between end and start, like 3 days was definitely.
Well, committed to those kids, but just looking at maybe how we can do that a little bit differently next year, maybe a different
It was so great
time
having
frame.
them in person, and they did an amazing job. We had, Elise did a lot with SEL and having the older kids come in and help the younger kids, and that was just so great to see. Because we didn't get to do that during when we were distance and everything, so it was great.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, Director of Technology.
As far as presenting goes, do I share my screen or?
Yes, you should have the ability.
No, I can't share.
Is that elevated?
No, yeah.
Oh, that would be.
Hanging out and participating.
Do you want to raise your hand? I don't see you on here. There it is. You went to the
No.
top. All right, give it a try, Bill. Oh, there you go. And you can take your mask off. I forgot to say that earlier when you're talking. We're all far enough apart.
All right, today I present to you a little presentation I call Teachnology. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Called Teachnology. And Teachnology is my favorite word for combining technology and teaching together, which is what my view is of technology within the district and should be. So what does this all start with? Well, 3 main goals. The first goal is to evaluate the programs we have in-house for social compliance and educational value, because we have many of them in here and seeing where they fit on that spectrum. Goal number 2 is evaluate the infrastructure and devices for best practices. So the devices we have in the students' hands or the wireless that's going to the machines, are they what they should be? And goal number 3 is evaluate teacher and student needs and skills. Now, why does it need to be this way? Well, first, to understand the needs of district and students, to understand what needs are for our kids and our teachers, what PD plan be put out there in the future. Develop a future infrastructure plan as a larger technology plan. So you can say, okay, this device is expiring this year. How do we build that out? What year is it expiring? What costs we need to put in place? What training we need in place for that? Or as far as bigger plans, as far as switches or projectors or what device the kids' hands, what do we need to think on that piece of it? And to model how the district serves the district and help address the needs and skills to allow our students to be innovative learners. Because that's the biggest piece of technology, is trying to allow innovation and communication and collaboration for the students. Now, as far as SOPA has been a big part of my job as I first came on board here. SOPA came out in 2019 in Illinois and became official. Every district had some place by July 1st of this year. And what they basically meant for SOPA was that if a company's holding your students' data, be it through an application, a website, or a case maybe, they've got to have good prices in place for how they're housing the information. And they're not, can't target your students through advertising and stuff to that effect. So what I've been working on this year to go along with that is I created a new site this year for the district, our compliance site. And it's directly to our district website. And as you can see, this list has been an ever-evolving list for this course of this year. We see all different applications, and these are things students have requested or things they've been using over the years, where either it's gotten approved, have sent an exhibit for, they're in progress, or not approved. And what this all means is, approved means that there is no student data share between us and the application. There's no login involved or nothing. They go right into it and they can go do what they want to do. So I can prove that straight up, there's no data worries. A signed exhibit means you actually have a signed agreement with that company to say you're gonna hold their data responsibly. When there's a breach, you will tell us. So we can maintain that and make sure they notify the community then if there's a breach. In progress means I'm hoping to get one from them soon. Because the big companies like Google and Microsoft are kind of dragging their feet on this, unfortunately. So we're hoping to get an agreement from them soon in our applications. And once they're not approved, they're actually not approved. But we're hoping to get approved for in the future. So then you can see there's a long, long list that's ever evolving. Like I got a new one on here today, just to add to the list. And these are all applications that may be used within our district at any certain point in time. Now, the next part is infrastructure and devices. And the big piece of this is there's 3 reasons why you need to look at this. One, if there is a need for Wi-Fi connectivity. Because if there's a dead zone with Wi-Fi, the kids can't connect to it. You know, if there's say it's in a gym or it's in a hallway or we're trying to do work in that area, they can't connect. They can't do anything with the devices they have. It's also looking at the lifespan of current devices and creating a life cycle plan. So if we have laptops that are 5, 6 years old, or iPads that are 5, 6 years old, or Chromebooks, or whatever device it may be, it might be a projector, it might be an Apple TV, it could be any device that we have in our district. It's analyzing those and making a plan to say, okay, when does it expire? When should we refresh it? What are the costs involved? And looking at that moving forward. And also it's considering the future of the devices we have in the district, and with the Chromebooks and iPads and laptops to see what will they fit in our environment in the future. You know, should we move Chromebooks to a certain level? Should we keep iPads at a certain level? What should we be looking at with those applications, and what training would be involved with that? What apps would be involved with that? All part of that process. And as I'm talking about, we have the device plan itself, evaluating prairie devices, evaluating the ones that people are great, and really seeing what apps are they using, what device are they using, what should they be using, what should they be using at 3rd versus 5th versus 8th versus kindergarten, what applications would fit best for those levels, and see what they match with the curriculum. Or not just, oh, I want to have access to give the kids time to play in this. How's that match to our goals? How's that match to our strategic needs? For our students, help them grow as learners, and help them grow as just thinkers, as people. Along with that comes defining the roles of the staff with technology. There's my role as tech director, which is kind of the overseer of things, or help coordinate repairs and updates of devices, help develop and implement devices. I help maintain different things to ensure that applications students are safe for them. Or there's a system administrator who's there to integrate with programs, make sure the data we're putting in systems is strong, make sure we can integrate with systems, make sure the data we have integrates with programs we need, like our lunch program, or other programs such as our communication programs. There's our technology specialists, who are the vital people in the schools. We're there to support teachers and students at the front end of it all. They're there if the computer breaks down, or if the software has a glitch. We're there to help a teacher if they don't understand a program. They're there to help them support in that role. A network coordinator who's there in the background, making sure everything is up and running, making sure we have the boxes and wires lit up, making sure we have the Wi-Fi restore devices, making sure we have everything we need security wise. Well, part of all this piece also means a blending of roles together. It's a big piece I believe in, is cross-training between these different roles. Because every role is special and everyone has their means. We also be able to support everything together as a group. So if a bigger issue arises, I can talk to any of my teammates and say, how would you work on this? Because they'll have the knowledge and experience of how that application works. Or if one of the staff's have to go away for a couple of days for maybe a workshop, or something happens with a family member, we can still go on as a team because we all have shared knowledge of how to move that forward applications. Another piece with me being this year, and also I mean so on staff coming on the board, is network discovery. I know that what we may have, I can see physically there, but why is it there? What purpose does it have? What's running on that equipment? And it's evaluating that moving forward to say, okay, we have this many switches, we have this many servers. Why? What's it doing? So as we're budgeting plans, making future plans, we can say, okay, maybe we consolidate that number down, or maybe it needs to grow. You never know, so that's what we're trying to evaluate right now. And most importantly, teacher and student needs. It's look at the application infrastructure. Do they have what they need? Are they matching to the curriculum? Are they giving the students the opportunity they need? What training should be confidential for teachers? Do they have the knowledge and wherewithal to actually be innovative with technology? Or are they stuck just in doing the basics? And what support needs are there for technology? And for the students, the device access. Do they have the internet they need? Do they have the devices they need? Do they have applications for practice that they need to grow as learners? And do they ability to be creative and collaborative with technology? That's the key with technology. It's that collaborative and creative piece. That's not just going to do online worksheets. It's there for them to explore and to learn, collaborate with their partners, communicate across classrooms, across the world. And how are we going to measure this? Through a survey called Bright Points. I've used this survey in the past in prior district, and this survey is a great tool because it allows us to look at how teachers, how students view technology, and how parents view technology. It allows us to get a sampling into their mind and how they use it in instruction. It allows us to then build a better plan moving forward for PD. To say, okay, well, teachers need support in creating videos, for example. We can build PD for that moving forward. Or students say, well, I'm not collaborating enough in my class. Okay, we can work on collaborating with teachers. Making sure they get that collaboration opportunity within their classrooms. And that all builds toward a future model where we're creating a master list of educational applications that align to curricular and student needs. We develop an inventory of district hardware and create a refresh cycle work technology to bring district up to current technology standards. And to create a great PD plan to explore and encourage teachers to explore technology and not feel confident in what they're doing. They're not worried about trying something out new. And that's where this is all building toward this year for me and in the future also in years beyond. We're building that model so we can get our students really innovative learners. Any questions?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
I
Thank-
actually,
Oh,
Bill, do you believe you can basically make these assessments of your inventory and what our future needs, or do you believe we're going to need to get an outside consultant to come in and help guide you down that path?
Right now, I'm working with what we have internally. Right now, we have with the new network coordinator we just hired recently. He just actually started Monday this week. He's actually helped me make good stretch forward on that already. Plus, we have the visibility to what tools we already have. And the information we have from our vendor we used in the past, I can use that as well. We can share the information out of that. Plus, the surveys that I'll be doing the Bright Bites gives a lot of insight into what we need to have as far as PD-wise and hardware-wise. So we can do a lot of stuff we already have in-house. Most things that I wouldn't need to go outside for, I really shouldn't have to. Maybe a small bit here and there if there's something I don't know or can't find out. But most of it, I think we can cover most of this in-house.
Are we going to continue? I mean, we've got fiber to the premise, but
Correct.
are we going to expand that throughout the buildings, or are we going to just maintain the category cable structure?
In time, we might expand what our fiber speed on that, because right now we're attempting to lower in spectrum with fiber speed. So in time, we may expand that out. That's something we still have to visit yet and look at costs and feasibility and timelines of that, about what it would take. Because in my past district, I did that, and it takes a good time on when those things need to happen. Because beyond just the approval process, then it's also taking to the city, and getting approvals there for any groundwork that has to be done on the ground, any permits need to be signed, stuff like that. But it is something I'm researching right now. We just had a meeting today actually about that, about the E-rate, looking at that part of E-rate funding goes to fund the tech purchase.
Hey, Bill, thinking about SOPA and a lot of the requirements there, thinking about the long list of technology that you kind of went through, do we have or do you envision a policy or sort of process procedure where we would start to limit the number of new applications coming in, based on some of the early assessment work that you can do, meaning we're not going to onboard any new technology without understanding whether or not it meets SOPA compliance, whether or not it meets certain architectural standards or fits within that framework of where we want to be, right? Not just allowing the technology to come in simply because we feel there's a need for it.
I'm glad you asked that question. That's actually I'm planning to work on this year with the superintendent along with Ms. McCluskey as well, is we're working on committees and means of talking about each other and saying, okay, what apps fit within this grade level? What apps really fit what we need? Because over the past years, there's been many apps out there that people wanted and thought, this would be a great idea, I'll try that app. Great, I'm glad you tried it out. But how did it impact student learning? That's what's all going to come back to, when we're looking at the curriculum goals, looking at different strategic areas and saying, okay, well, we have these things, what are they doing for us? What is it costing us? Is it really benefiting what we want to have here? Or is it something we just bought because we bought it in the past? It's you're probably looking at evaluating that for the next couple of years or so, both budget-wise, standard-wise, and everything else, to really see, okay, where is it matching up? Because if it's not helping our kids grow, then why do we have it?
And maybe building on where Jim was going to from the assessment perspective, I've always found it helpful to there's a lot of frameworks out there, and you can find the maturity models. Here we do assessment, we find out kind of where we are, where we want to be, and then I think as a board and administration, we can kind of help you get there if it feels like it makes sense. The one other thing I was kind of interested that I didn't really see in the presentation was a nod towards all the work we've done in the cloud with Google Docs and some of those other things. So interested, at some point, your thoughts on where the district should be going, should be heading towards the use of software as a service and cloud technologies.
Definitely. I mean, I can explore that. I can talk about it now if you like, or I can talk about that long term as bring my bigger plan forward.
Yeah, I think as you bring that plan forward, to figure out how we start to leverage that versus the on-prem technologies and where the cost trade-off might be.
Okay, we'll do.
Yeah, one of the two things that struck me. One, the fact that we have 12 servers.
Well, that's physical servers. We have tons of virtual ones.
Yeah, but even 12 physical ones seemed high. And interested as you look through and figure out what all of them are doing and what of them may be redundancy for different systems. So curious to learn more about that. And then as you were talking about connectivity and E-rate joining back onto the ICN network, have you looked at how the district may join back onto ICN?
We're starting to branch that process right now. I know prior to coming here, there's a little talk about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know Greg mentioned it previously about ICN, and I'm maybe looking at that as well, as long as other vendors possibly out there as well for bandwidth purposes. We want to be reliable out there. I'm open to it.
Okay. Yeah, just that the ICN has revitalized itself significantly from what it was 2 or 3 years ago, and should be a pretty viable opportunity there. All right.
Can I just ask just one question? I know, like with COVID, every probably tech department got hit hard. Going back a few slides, you mentioned like the different titles or roles. You coming into it is new as director. I mean, I do know with the resignation from Mary Beth, that was definitely a loss for our district. But so now her position has been filled.
It is in the process of being filled currently. It doesn't currently being worked on at this time.
Okay. And then like the other roles, as far as
we have currently two technology specialists, and they serve the 4 buildings.
Okay.
And then also I also serve as well building levels as well. Like when they're at, say, one of them may be at Reed, one may be at Walsh, I'll be at Ludwig, supporting Ludwig as well when I'm there. And then we also have a network specialist as well as or network coordinator, I should say. And that person just started Monday, and they're getting their hands wet and hands dirty, I should say, in the environment, learning the environment. He's already helped fix a small problem already today. There's some of the small issues we have popping up. So it's just getting other people acclimated to the systems, and then with the cross training also, it's going to help. So in case, like, say I'm at Old Prairie one day, then the person that coordinator can jump in also help out at Ludwig, and stuff like that. Or if there's an issue network-wise, they may have some of the technology specialists may be able to jump in and support some piece of that with the cross training.
So as far as like number of staff, I mean, do you feel comfortable within the department as far
I mean,
as going forward?
As far as for now, yes. There's certain times year gets more hectic than others, of course. I mean, summertime is always hectic. I mean, there's always that's your cycling season and you for lots of devices. But once the summer cycle is done with, then it kind of goes back to, ebb and flow of the year.
Sure.
Fixing your devices, you're processing data, you're making sure things are up and running, stuff like that.
What Bill showed in the presentation is the plan that we talked about back in, I want to say April or May, about getting back to the staffing we had in summer of 2019.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we had that in place with the new hire coming on. And then with Mary Beth's resignation, we're back to where we were.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
we've re-looked at that position. We've clarified what we want out of that position. It has been posted, and I know you've already looked at some applicants, not starting the formal process yet. So our goal continues to be, and we'd fully expect, gosh, maybe by the October board meeting to bring you back a name to have us fully staffed at the summer of 2019 level that we were. And updated job descriptions for each of those positions Bill outlined in the presentation.
All right, thank you. All right, on to the consent agenda. As we proceed into the action items, if I could ask board members to call out their last names when they are motioning, so that Sandy can better hear who has motioned first and seconds. All right, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Washington.
That's first.
I'll second Gurecki.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Roll call, please.
Middleton.
Yes.
Gurecki.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Swipe.
Yes.
Kurtula. Justin.
Yes. Motion carries. I need a motion to approve the annual budget for fiscal year 2022. Any further questions after the presentation? Okay, and as David mentioned, this is the form that everybody must sign before they leave tonight, so that the budget is.
Do you want to start?
We can do it. There's gonna be, we have time to sign it. Okay, roll call, please.
Swipe.
Yes.
Kurtula. Stuckey.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Gurecki.
Yes.
Justin.
Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the grading scale for grades 2 through 5.
Motion, Washington.
Middleton second.
All right.
Give us an overview.
If you recall back in February, Oakbury piloted the traditional grading scale to get back to a normal system after COVID and several things happened. It was one success. They have implemented it and doing very well. And as a result, the recommendation is to read in Ludwig schools grades 2 through 5 to pilot a traditional grading scale as well. And that would ensure vertical articulation to junior high and also make it easier for students to understand the grading processes. So traditional grading scale is more standardized and universally recognized. It makes it easier for students to see where they stand in their academic process, and it gives them a quantifiable grade, score and scale to look at. And it's a good way for them to see good grades. And it's also easier for parents to understand and easier for students and teachers as well. And you can see in the memo, I compared it to current grading scale, which is a little bit higher for students to get an A-, they would get a 92. And with this scale, it would alleviate the plus and minus, make it easier for students and easier for teachers to grade. So at this time, my recommendation is we have
question. Can you explain the point value? Like, what is that like the grade? Like, I don't know, just further explanation.
So the point value, so for an A would be 4 points, 3 points would be for B, all the way down to an F would be 0 points. So when it's calculated in Power School, and for a grade point average.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I thought it was grade point average. I just wanted to clarify a little bit.
If we didn't use Power School, it wouldn't be necessary. If we were just using paper report cards, for example.
When you said Power School, it clicked.
Yeah.
I had it on the parent side, but outside of it, I'm like, yeah, it didn't make sense. It makes sense.
Any other questions?
Yes. Oh, good. No.
Jamie, I was just gonna ask, so when it was piloted at Oak Prairie, I mean, it was well received.
That was,
Okay,
you know, that was teacher driven.
right,
That brought the teachers, and so when it was implemented, it just made everything a lot easier.
okay.
Parents were happy with that, and really happy.
Let me build upon that. Both iterations of this were teacher initiated. So starting at Oak Prairie and then again in grades 2 through 5, that request came from the teachers. The administration looked into it, said, okay, yeah, we agree.
When would it take effect? I'm sorry.
When would it take effect? Like, when would you start piloting it? Now?
Before the end of the first trimester or quarter.
It wasn't.
Mhm.
I'm just relating it to the grades as I was looking at them in Power School. My son had an A minus, so I was just trying to. No more minus.
And-
I'm okay with that.
And as we talked about actual grade points, I've been seeing 4th grade homework come home or work come home graded with what looks like traditional A's and 93s or, you know, whatever that is. But then there's been a calculation, it looks like, for actual grade points. Is that something everybody's doing, or is that just something my student's teacher is doing? Does that make sense?
It sounds to me like it's a
Teacher thing. Yeah, and it feels like it's, you know, seeing this and putting the pieces together, that there's this transition to helping students understand the translation of A is 4, B is 3, and how even some of that math works all of the time, and seeing the thing. So I'll just say that I, as a parent, appreciated that and made sense. And as we move forward, if that's other teachers begin to do that, that might be a way to help students, especially in the lower grades, understand more than, but yeah, better understand the changes. So.
And maybe at those grade levels, it could even be more likely it's referring to a rubric instead of a grade point average. That's another possibility. Not knowing the assignments you're talking about, I have no idea.
It seemed like all of them had it.
Okay.
So
Then
yeah.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Washington.
Yes.
Gurecki.
Yes.
Swett.
Yes.
Middleton.
Yeah.
Jackie.
Yes.
Sisela. Justin.
Yes, motion carries. All right, discussion items, assessment class for teachers.
Yeah, so this is an idea I've had. I've taught a graduate course a number of years for Illinois State University for future principals, and it's called Assessment Data Systems. Every time, and I was originally asked to redesign the class several years ago to update it, for lack of a better word. And so every time I teach this, it drives me crazy. What goes through my head as I see the great conversations and the learning that's going on is, I wish we had this in our district. And so this seems like a perfect time to introduce the idea with the work that we're starting to do around assessments as a way to, if teachers have the time and availability, treat it as if it's a graduate course. They don't have to pay anything for it, and it's minimal expense to the district. The proposal I have is that I would teach this pro bono, not looking to make any money off of this, but to teach it very similar to the way I would cut out the assignments that are more university assignments that are just for the program, and keep it, I've got it down to the essential curriculum and the power standards, for lack of a better word, and weaning that out to really get it down to a 3-hour graduate course for any teachers in D92 who want that. The only thing they would have to give is their time and talent, And the reward for them would be they would move over on the salary schedule as if it were 3 graduate course hours, which is typical if they take a graduate course. But it's not, they're not going to get a transcript for it. It's not an official university course. You just happen to have a professor who designed the course who can teach it for free. They get the benefit of the learning and a bump on the salary schedule, but nothing on the transcript. They couldn't take it to another district. It isn't worth anything as far as transferable credits to another university. I just want to be clear about that. What the district gets out of that is really building some initial capacity around assessment literacy. And really, and I don't know, we have not surveyed teachers to see what the interest would be. I don't know how many we'd be talking about, but to build some capacity around a cadre of teachers, just like we did for the PLC teacher leaders last spring. We had a group of volunteers. They were compensated to go through a number, I think 5 sessions in the spring. And now as questions come up in the PLC teams, there's an embedded teacher leader in there. So not everything comes to the principal, not everything comes to the superintendent. It's building capacity. This is the same model we'd like to use, knowing that we're going on an assessment PD journey, where we're trying to build that more focused next year. If I start this year with building a group, that could lead into an assessment task force of teachers that could help plan how do we roll this out on a grander scale next year for everyone. So it really is focused on increasing our assessment literacy in D92 and building teacher leaders. We're really continuously looking for teachers who just want to have a way to teach and lead, not ready to be a principal. They love what they do, but they want another role. They're ready for that other challenge in their profession. So it's just an idea we've had, talked about it off and on for about a year now. COVID always got in the way, and it seems like the right time to do this kind of stuff. Everything I've talked about tonight, short of the mitigation strategies we talked about earlier, is what we should be talking about. Like it feels so good professionally to have conversations around the district leadership team, our strategic plan, and implementing that, SEL, PLCs, assessment. This is what we're supposed to be all about, not how many kids have tested positive for COVID this week. So it's exciting stuff. I've given the union a heads up. I said, hey, here's an idea I'd like to present to the board. Do you have any concern about this, any problem? And I haven't been told there's any snags, but what I would owe you and the union is a more formal detailed plan, but it's nothing that I haven't said already. It would just be reducing all the details to writing, dates, meeting times, that kind of stuff. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. There's a kind of some stuff from my syllabus I've cut and pasted in there, which might be a little geeky, and probably I should have made it more for, parents to read too, but you get the idea of what the course is about. So what I'm looking for is just any discussion, or sure, Tim, sounds good. Go ahead and see what you got. And the timeline I would like to look at is if this was approved by the union and the board, or if the union didn't have a problem with it and the board could approve this at the October board meeting, I'd like to start, I see this as being some kind of a November, very early December, not going too close to winter break, and then taking a little break, and then January, February, wrapping up by March for sure. So it's not a semester class in the traditional fall, spring, but kind of a winter course. And depending on who's interested and how many, I would design what day we meet. I want to make it obviously easy for teachers. So whoever is interested will work around their schedules to select the day of the week and the time of day. Any questions about that?
Would you solely be doing it, or would you have outsource someone coming to help you, or it would just be you?
Well, actually, some of our psychs have helped with this course before. I've used D92 psychs where they've been guest speakers in the past. I've used our principals in the past. I've still got some of their recordings where I've recorded them and used them as guest speakers. So we use a guest speaker format. I've probably taught this, I don't know, 5 or 6 different semesters. So yeah, I can honestly say each time I take what I did previously and try to find a way to make it better. And the different twist here is that this is very professionally personal. I'm not just teaching future leaders in all these other districts across the state. These are our teachers in our district. So I've never done something like that. And so exactly how it gets designed and who I partner with, I know Ms. McCluskey is very interested. I know she would like to be a part of that too. And so, yeah, I'm looking for those kind of partners.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Mhm.
Implementing the PLCs, I mean, this is, you know, here's the opportunity to get educated and, you know, we're gonna talk about assessment.
Mhm.
This gives so many people the opportunity to just, okay, how do I learn? What can I learn? What can I take away?
Yeah.
You can, actually, that assessment process could be much faster. The more teachers we get involved.
Tim,
That's the
you know,
hope.
If this caught on and all the teachers really, you know, believed it and wanted to join it, do we have the capacity to teach all of the teachers, you know, in one semester, or would you think this would spread out over multiple semesters? How would that impact that they're moving on the scale type thing?
So I see this as almost, I don't know if I'd call it a trainer of trainers model, but once again, it's building the capacity. The more, if we have 5 or 10 or 15, things start multiplying a little bit with how quickly we move next year. So next year, we know we're focused on district-wide PD. This is not a focus on, I'd be floored if we got as many as you're in, you know, that'd be pie in the sky, right? But it is some work. It is a time commitment. And man, I mean, teachers, time is valuable and work hard. They go home, they have lives and families. So I'm probably realistic about, I don't even want to make a guess of how many, but I wouldn't expect more than one class's worth. I'd love to have the problem of 30 people. I mean, I don't know what that capacity is where it gets to be too many. We have to talk about breaking it into 2. You sure would hate to tell somebody no who is really into it. But the goal would not be to continue this exact thing next year. This would be a building block for a different kind of PD where once again, you start spreading it. This isn't about me, it's about we. So somebody kicks it off. What I would love that this models, kind of back to what Jim said, is there are teachers who they take graduate courses, they are experts in something, and to have a model down the road where we can work with the union to create a structure where teachers teach teachers in a structured way, and it could be a class of 3 meetings or 5 meetings or 10, whatever. It can be pairs of teachers teaching. I've implemented that kind of stuff before in other places. I would love to use this, not just for our assessment capacity, but to model how we can internally in D92 take good expert sources and let's learn from each other. That would be the goal, is to really create that learning organization. And once again, I know people take graduate courses for all the right reasons. There's also, obviously, you move over on the salary schedule. And so I think that's one thing so there is a cost to the district that, you know, same as if they took a graduate course. You're saving money because the district does pay part of the tuition currently, so you won't have to pay that part as a district. I would ask, let's make it easy on the teachers. There's 3 books I'd recommend to use, and I would expect, you know, as a district, we would pay for that. So there's really no cost to the teacher other than their time. Is that?
Yeah, thanks.
No, yeah, I much like we have Parent University, the D92 University for professionalism,
Yeah.
or not professionalism, but for professional development. Makes a lot of sense.
I'd want to see it to go well so that we can replicate it with teachers, principals, other people can do these kinds of things in some form down the road. We've got a lot of experts here.
All right.
So I'll bring back a proposal for that. And then steering committee membership. This was something that came out of bargaining. So once again, we didn't have the contract approved until the August 17th board meeting. So what I'm coming back to the board with is we've already set committees for the board. Those are getting up and running as we speak. But one new one this year as a result of the new teacher collective bargaining agreement is a steering committee that, and then year 1, it meets 4 times because we've got some work to do to go through the stipend list that was part of the agreement we made in negotiations. But normally, so this year there'd be 4 meetings. Normally this group would meet 2 or 3 times a year. And there's sometimes when you have nothing to meet about and you just don't. but it's to take care of things that come up with the collective bargaining agreement that you'd like to fix and not wait until the next. So it could be anything from a teacher at Walsh wants to start an after-school basketball program for students, for kindergarten and first graders. There's a way to do a proposal, green, electronically, no paper, and they fill that out. It would go to the steering committee. The steering committee consists of myself and 2 board members, 3 people representing the board and district, 3 people from the union, and we talk about it. And if we can agree on this is a good thing for D92, then it goes to the board approves it. And that's the way you keep your contract meaningful, well, not meaningful, but fluid and a little bit malleable in a good way throughout. I think of a time when IESA changed the way they did chess. So we had chess sponsors, and I had this model previously, and they doubled the season. Well, there's no mechanism until the next negotiation to change that chess sponsor's pay. They're required to work twice as much for the same pay. With this structure in place, we were able to take that to the steering committee. It was a no-brainer. We fixed it and moved on. So it's a way to really just help run the district from a union standpoint if things come up mid-contract. So it would entail this year meeting 4 times. I would say hour and a half for those 4 times. And I don't know if I put in here that, I don't know if we have a target evening that we would do, but we would want, the dates are set. We could probably be flexible if only one of those was a problem, but we did try to get the dates on the calendar, and then exactly what time we would start. Like I said, we could negotiate that a little bit and see what works, because it's got to work for board members. It has to work for teachers too. So questions about the structure? It's a good thing once it's up and running. It's just getting it off the ground right now. So if I don't want you all to volunteer at once, we can only have 2 board members. Email me if you're interested. And if we have no one, we can work through that. So if that's exciting to you, let me know. I would encourage you, if you think you might want to do anything with negotiations at the next contract, this would be something you might want to do. Or if you did it in the last contract, you'd like to see some of that carryover, this is something you might want to do, but it's not limited obviously to those individuals. So, and that, any other board discussion about that?
All right. We don't have any old business, any new business? No, okay, information requests, information items, the FOIA requests and student conduct review were in the board packet. No public comment on items not on the agenda?
None.
All right.
Can I just go back to the student conduct review? I had just seen at Walsh, there were 2
I had the same question.
suspensions.
So I want to be careful in open session, but
Sorry.
those were, no, and there, it's public information.
Public information.
It was a unique situation. It was something of an ongoing nature for one individual student. And I don't see that being a problem going forward. That's probably about as much as I could share. I don't see it as part of a pattern. It did not involve weapons or drugs, things of that nature, which is the expulsion route. And
this is kindergarten and first graders.
it was a student at Walsh.
Right.
Okay.
I was involved in that from beginning to end, so I feel comfortable with the situation.
All right, at this time, the board is going to move into closed session. The board may enter closed session for the purposes of 5 ILS 120, subsections 1 and or 2. I need a motion to enter into closed session.
On the gifts twice.
Second, Middleton.
Roll.
Kirkla. White.
Yes.
Crafty. Yes. Gurecki.
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yes, motion carries. All right, we're in closed session.